Wait for it. Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans, a Stabby Chaos Coordinator, and one talky Chief Shenanigator geeking out over science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let our guests introduce themselves to our listeners and viewers at home, starting with you, Miss Charli Cox.
Hello, everybody. I am Charli Cox, live here from the Pacific Northwest, in case you couldn't tell from my background. I write science fiction and military fantasy with a sense of humor because life can be dark, so let's embrace a little joy wherever we can find it.
Okay. All right. Is that just because the Sasquatch Coalition pays you to say that?
No, my Sasquatch friend is, actually, I can't see him, but this is my other Sasquatch friend. Wait, there he is. That's Gunny.
Ooh. Nice.
Mm-hmm. I'm convinced they pay her. They're like a cartel. That's why we also don't see any more pictures of them. Because there's a conspiracy abound. I'm just saying.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
That's what you would say if you were fed a glowy, right?
There we go. Oh, God.
Yeah, you're Team Sasquatch. I know how this goes. All right, Jana. What are your thoughts? Would you like to introduce yourself or talk to us about Sasquatch? Because she is from the Pacific Northwest.
Well, the Sasquatch is fun, but we'll do introductions because that's kind of what we do at this part of the show. So, you know, we may as well don't knock a good thing. My name's Janice Brown. I write under the pen name Jenna Ray. That's where all the speculative stuff goes, and there's a lot of speculative stuff. I write other things under other pen names. I really have to learn how to spit that out. And yes, we should do a Sasquatch panel. Side notes. And I am the chief shenanigator around here, which mostly means that I'm here to give JR a hard time and to suggest that we do panels where we get to talk about things beyond just the military, or we bring the military into our fantasy, and it makes me happy.
All right, and we like it when you're happy. Next, we got Miss Melissa McShane, the war mistress, war master, and war hamster herself.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Melissa McShane. I'm the author of many fantasy novels, including, for this one, The Living Oracle, which is about the Fae coming back. And I am happy to be here.
At this point, you've got more war nicknames than War Daddy, so does that make you like War Mommy at this point?
No, I think that would be bad. I'll stick with War Mistress. That's a good one. Okay. I like that one. Yeah.
All right. I mean, the other guy was a famous World War II tanker, but you know.
That's true, but not a famous World War II tanker for me, unfortunately. I wouldn't want to.
Yeah, you're not old enough. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not that old. No.
No, youngins these days. All right.
That's right.
All right. Next, we have Miss Randy Dawn. Would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers at home? It's been a bit since you've been on the show.
Yeah, but I'm happy to be invited back. Thank you so much. You'd never know it based on the anodyne location that I'm in now, but I'm actually in Tokyo. So welcome from Japan, a temporary stopover. I am a fantasy writer of both dark fantasy and light fantasy. My most recent book is We Interrupt This Program. Mirroring is weird. There we go. We Interrupt This Program. It is a funny fantasy about a cozy mystery town that's also full of magic that's falling apart. However, I had a couple novels come out last year as well, one of which was called Leave No Trace, and it dealt with the war between the Fae and humans because the Fae were losing all their lands. So I feel like I'm in a good crowd here. So yeah, if you like funny, if you like dark, I got a little bit of both.
That was the one that had the I was going to say use vulgarity, but we're too early in for that. There's a really awesome looking covers for the.
Thank you very much.
We got lots of comments on those covers.
That's awesome. Yeah, I got a lot of nice comments on the covers. I'm waiting for as many comments on the interior, but that takes longer to get feedback on.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, yes. We'll work on it though. So if you've read it and you watched episode 637 where she was on, you should comment there. But also, read and review the books. That does help. We like reviews, except for maybe Jana. She's weird. That's Dr. Pepper country, and they do things differently.
Excuse you, Terry. Introduce yourself before I.
I was going to say last, but certainly not least, we have the many voices and stories from the one, the only Miss Terry K. Job, author, narrator, overall awesome librarian.
Hey, you stole the words right out of my mouth, sir. Yes, Terry K. Job, audiobook narrator, author of several short stories at this point, and the person who has urban fae stories clamoring in her head for me to finish my project so I can write them.
So the voices talk to you. Is that what you're telling me?
Oh, yes, all the time. My muse won't shut up. It's a problem.
That's why she
It's
has
a
to be in this
problem.
underground bunker right now.
Yes, yes. Oh,
Well,
that's
that's
I'm also
come out
that,
of
the
the closet
occasional
yet.
phantom of the podcast.
She just hasn't come out of the closet yet. She'll do that someday and be a professional.
Yeah,
But until
right
then,
after
she keeps the dogs away. So there's that.
Yeah.
All right. So we do have the religion question. We did theme it. So before we get too deep into this interview, I do have to ask you, and we're just going to go round robin, starting with you, Jana, since you've been so snarky today. Are you brave enough to
You
eat?
started it. I'm just going to meet you at the ground that you give me. Am I brave enough? Go ahead.
Are you brave enough to eat with the Fae?
I am not stupid enough to eat with the Fae. The only time we eat with the Fae is if they're on my ground and I'm not on theirs.
All right. Terry?
Yeah, have to be careful.
Ooh. If I was still at my last job, I'd say yes. Right now,
Okay,
depend on the day.
that's fair. Ranger agrees. All right. What about you, Melissa? You eating with the Fae or are you going to go Team Jana?
I'm only eating with the Fae if I brought my own food. I do not trust that at all.
All right. All right. I thought you might be a braver lot. All right. Charli.
So the only fae that I would eat with would be probably Sasquatch for obvious reasons, and only if it's something that they foraged locally and I watch them forage it. Otherwise, hell to the no. I'm not stupid, just like Jana. Nope, I don't want to die.
I'm all for bringing my own food as well. I think that's a very wise idea. But you know, the Fae can be modernized. I'm trying to do that in some of my books. I'm bringing them into the modern world. So maybe if you put enough, processed food out there, something like Fritos. I think Fritos would be fine to eat today because nothing's getting past that barrier, right? So it really just depends on the food. Is it modern enough for them to not be able to work their magic through it? That kind of thing. So. Yes, with conditions.
See? Appropriate catering.
That's right, exactly.
I mean, I've eaten army food and it didn't kill me, so I'm going to go with a yes because it can't be any worse than that. My standards are kind of low. And because we are civilized human beings here at the Blasters Blaze podcast, we are no longer knuckle dragging troglodytes. I'm going to ask you, coffee or tea, and what are you drinking with the fairies? Jana.
I'm always drinking Diet Dr. Pepper. I don't think that even fairies can mess with that because I say so. And they actually have a Dr. Pepper milkshake at the Arctic Circle out here, which we tried the other day, and that was phenomenal. So for summertime drinking with the Fae, we will have Dr. Pepper milkshakes.
That actually doesn't sound too bad.
It was really, really good.
I
I didn't look at the calorie count. You don't want to know, I'm fairly certain, but it was delicious.
I wonder if it works as like an ice cream float.
It's like that, but it's because it's all whirled together into the milkshake. You don't get that breakup, so it's the best part of a float. That place where the ice cream and the soda milk meet.
So, does your milkshake bring all the Fae to the yard?
Oh, darn straight. I like Randy. She can stay.
Yeah, well, you said that when we interviewed her last time, though. So I mean,
Well,
at least it's consistent.
I am reaffirming important truths, but now ask Terry what she's drinking.
All right, Terry, what are you drinking with the Fae?
Well, if it's one of the good days, I'll go with my standard hot chocolate because that's just awesome. If it's one of the days that I decide to eat with the Fae, though, I'm just going to go all out and have wine. That sounds fun.
In for a penny.
I mean,
Absolutely.
their wine or yours?
Either.
Oh,
That's a
geez.
valid answer.
Brave. All right.
All right, Melissa.
Well, you know me, it's always going to be Coca-Cola. And I personally believe that fairies, Fae, are not equipped to deal with Coca-Cola. So it could also be a weapon of mass destruction. And, that might be necessary.
Explain more. I'm all ears.
Well, Coke has all those qualities that make it good for cleaning batteries. And I think if you're not prepared, if your system isn't prepared for that, you're probably going to be in a lot of discomfort, like the Fae. So there you go.
So they don't like the fizzy water. Got it.
Yeah, well, specifically the Coca-Cola fizzy water. I probably shouldn't like it either, but there you go.
I mean, I can't judge. I drink it too. So, Charli, you drinking with the fairies, the Fae?
So I'm going to be drinking coffee with sugar and half, and this time of year there's going to be some ice in it. But if I'm drinking with the Fae, I'm going to add some bourbon or some whiskey or something to give it a little bit of a kick.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm going to go out, I may as well go out with a buzz.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
You know, we made that argument a couple times in the Army when they wouldn't let us have the alcohol, and it never won.
No.
So, but if we're on our own, we can do that. So why not?
Yeah, why not?
All right. What about you, Randy? What are you drinking with the fairies today?
I'm all in with tea because I do love tea with a little bit of milk in it and everything. I'm just all over the tea. And the Fae have all sorts of kinds of tea anyway. They have primrose tea. They have all sorts of stuff that they create that has various healing properties. So I'm all in with that. But a true drink is, of course, the water of life, the uskabitha, the whiskey that I would be having with them. They would have the purest kind possible. And I would definitely either put it in the tea or drink it all by itself. So both of those things work for me.
Little of that real old Mountain Dew.
There you go. Exactly. The original Mountain Dew.
Wait, Mountain Dew had alcohol in it? I didn't know that.
No.
We're talking about hooch, JR.
Oh, hooch.
Moonshine.
Moonshine.
I've never heard moonshine called that. Okay.
Yeah, Mountain
How
Dew.
in the
Yeah,
world are
as
you
long as
more
it's
innocent than we are?
No.
Or maybe we just have
Crazy.
different vernaculars colloquially, okay?
Or maybe he's just a baby.
You're from the South.
Yeah, we
know,
call
Goodness.
All those
it
Irish and
moonshine.
Scots came over and settled in the Appalachians and brought their
See?
whiskey-making mountain properties with them. And that's how we ended up with posheen and whiskey and all this sort of, all the stuff that gets made in the little stills that hide in the
Don't
mountains.
officially exist.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
Allegedly.
We just
Cannot
call it
confirm or deny.
white liquor, moonshine. Like I've never heard it called Mountain Dew.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I'll take it. You know, new is new, right?
Oh, you sweet summer child.
All right. So if I'm drinking with the Fae, I would say probably something a little bit harder. But because, Fae's always, the medieval-esque vibe for me, I'll go with mead or ale just because, that feels, germane for them.
Very reasonable.
But I would have coffee on hand for the hangover afterwards. Because I have a feeling even the tiniest of them could drink us under the table.
Really?
Yeah.
You know, it'd be funny to watch as the Fae and the dwarves go at it for the drinking.
Oh, my money's on the dwarves.
Yeah,
Hands down.
we'll have to. That might be another panel: dwarves versus fairies. All right. So with that out of the way, we are going to let all of these authors list their favorite books at the end as the sponsor, and I will just link to all of those so we can dive into the topic. And with that out of the way, let's define our terms. Obviously, it's their favorite book they've written because, we like to read all their stuff too. But, we'd like to pimp our own stuff because we're, mercenaries. With that, so first off, I think, for this panel to work, we have to define the Fae. So I asked my good friend Google because they never lied to me. The Fae or fairy folk are supernatural beings from European folklore, particularly Celtic, Irish and Scottish, French, Germanic, and broader traditions, often described as magical, ethereal spirits or creatures that inhabit a parallel realm to the human world. Everyone okay with that, or is there something missing?
I'm good with
It's
that.
a good general starting place.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah, for this conversation, I think that's fine. I think you can find Fae or Fae creatures of various stripes all over the world. But if we do want to keep it specific to European, then I'm fine with that too.
I don't think it matters if it's specific to European. I just didn't know it was more broad than that. I relied on Air Google to tell me things.
Well, those are the most well-known and under that particular term because you have fairy type creatures in lots and lots of different cultures, but they tend to have different names for them and sometimes different rules for how they behave. Japan has a very, very rich culture of different kinds of spirits and different kinds of fairy type creatures, but they generally don't call them that. They use that term very differently. So
Well,
if we're going to define terms,
and
I guess we start there. Go, Randy.
Yeah, and I've been having sort of a discussion with some of my editors about what is the best way to spell Fae. Is it F-A-E? Is it F-A-Y? Like, does it only incorporate fairies? I personally use it, at least in my fiction, as the generic term for magical creatures. It just simplifies things, and that may or may not be accurate, but in my worldview, and that covers the world, Anansi would be a Fae creature, is how I would look at it. I had a Pombero out of South America in my first book. Fae creature. That's how I personally categorize it. That could be completely wrong. Please feel free to change me on this. But that's generally how if I want to say fairies, I'll say fairies, and that's a specific category. The Fae in general is the magical creatures that populate folklore and fantasy. In my take,
I think your definition is good because. For the purpose of this discussion, so we don't go too far afield, because I think that becomes really broad. I think it would be interesting to have a discussion about creatures that are Fae, in Randy's definition, that aren't necessarily the Fae folk from European tradition. But I think we will get farther if we stick with the definition you gave us, just for the sake of discussion.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. And we have promised our listeners to stick much closer to the hour mark. And if we don't, narrow this, then we're going to end up going far beyond that. So there is plenty of fertile ground here for multiple panels.
And in addition to promising the readers listeners, that mostly came because I had to promise Jana, or she was going to boycott. She's like, we can't do 3-hour panels, JR.
It's fun, but we have stuff to do.
Yeah.
That is also fun.
This is what happens when you let her put the publisher hat on. She gets all cranky and mean.
Sleeping.
Someone's got to try to
Get the writing done.
All right, so the next term we got to define for this to work is what magic is. So I went kind of generic. Also used Google because this tend to be what we do for consistency. Is magic refers to the use of supernatural forces, rituals, or abilities to influence the magic or the world, events, people, or reality in a way that defy ordinary natural laws. It appears across human cultures and folklore, religion, occult practices, stage performances, and modern fantasy. I don't know that I could get much more simple than that, but is everyone good with it? What is magic?
Sure.
Yeah, that works for me.
All right. Now the one we might argue on is what is Fae Magic specifically, because now we narrow it down a little bit. So Fae Magic, according to Google, whatever AI they got running in the background of their search algorithms, Fae Magic, also called Faerie Magic, Fae Magic, F-E-Y, or glamour-based enchantment, is a supernatural power inherent to the Fae, fairies, or fair folk. In European folklore, especially Celtic tradition, it is a wild, ancient, nature-tied, and often governed by strict alien rules rather than human logic or morality. Unlike structured wizard magic in many fantasy systems with spellbooks, mana costs, or schools, Fae Magic feels instinctive, unpredictable, wild, and deeply connected to the other world or fairy world, emotions, words, in the natural, supernatural environments. So it's more nature and emotion based is basically what they're saying. I am sure people have opinions on this, so I will let you guys all go at it.
I was just going to ask a clarifying question. So based on that definition, we want to talk more druidic style magic as opposed to wizards with wands and spellbooks. Am I understanding correctly?
It could be whatever you want it to be, because we're here to discuss the terms as we discuss the topic. So,
alrighty then.
Well, I think
If
if
you're
you're making the connection to druidic magic, to me, it would seem that druidic would be a bit more structured than Fae magic, even though both would be heavily influenced by elemental factors.
yes, that makes sense to me.
That sentence fell apart at the end.
We're going to rock with it. We'll rock with you, Faerie. We got you.
I agree with Charli on this, is that I think that the key division that we want to have for this conversation is the difference between human magic and Fae magic, right? And then Fae magic comes from a more sort of like an instinctual connection with the elements or the earth or however you want to do it. I think it still has its own limitations, but it's not the same as what we perceive as witch, warlock, human-based magic. I think we understand that witches and warlocks are coming out of human, and those tend to be more like, hey, I have my book. Where's the spell? I got to say the right words at the right time. So it's got a more mechanical feel to it. Step 1, step 2, step 3 kind of thing. And it's not that the two can't weave together, but if we're going to split them, that's kind of what I would say. a little side note in the book that I just finished that's with the editor right now, I'm actually doing a thing where we're talking about human magic being a thing that the Fae don't understand because it's technology. So like if you present them with a remote control on the TV, they'll be like, I don't understand this magic, but it does things. So like to me, that's a distinction I'm personally making in my own books, but for the purpose of this conversation, I think I'm agreeing with Charli on this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think I would take it one step further and say that you could have humans using the kind of magic that Fae do, but it's going to be, just like you say, it's going to be for different reasons or with a different framework. I think the Fae, I think in general, we think of the Fae as having a different relationship with magic than humans do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, so it's not, I mean, it is nature tied, and we said, well, there's druids, but the druids are doing it differently, and the Fae are doing it maybe instinctually. Maybe it's like a part of who they are as opposed to something they learn. But I think that well, like I said, that their relationship with magic is just going to be different from humans, however that manifests.
And in this definition, it's also pulling on their, other dimension powers, right? Because, they're not of this world, which is, why you don't step into the fairy circle, right? And so the magic is being pulled from this other dimension too, by the definition that Google gave. In which case, I don't think Druid ever specified where their magic came from, other than it's nature-based. But it never got the impression, anything I've read about it, that was coming from other worlds, other dimensions.
So there's also this belief in Irish folklore, and probably all Celtic to begin with. But the idea is that a lot of the Seelie, the Fae characters that we call fairies, but the Seelie, the Unseelie, were on the earth. We're part of the earth until humans showed up and ultimately drove them underground, which is where they now reside, which is why we talk about fairy mounds or fairy hills or anything. So there's the argument too that their magic is earth-based, but they can only they can access it. So it kind of depends on where they are, but humans don't access it, in part because they're the ones who drove the fairy away. But then you have the druids who maybe go between two worlds and can do a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite definitions is that humans use magic, Fae are magic. That's the level of instinctive what they are, is they are creatures of magic. And so humans may use magic. Humans may even use aspects of Fae magic, glamours and things like that. But the fairy, that's what they are. And so it comes very, very naturally. And it's why certain things like technology, cold iron, that kind of stuff can be so disruptive, because it's who they are innately versus something they're just using. Yeah. I don't remember where I read that, but it was a really good definition. And whatever author wrote it, all the kudos. Because I remember it, but I don't remember from what.
That's a good one.
So if the magic is part of who they are, in a lot of fantasy worlds, you have the half races where we've, I stumbled all over into that one with Melissa last time we were on that panel. But are there ever half fairies? Is that something you see? In which case, you could be part human and still instinctively also be part fairy and use their magic?
That's interesting.
That
just might be a little less powerful.
Well,
or more chaotic because you're human, so more powerful? I don't know.
I think it would depend on the universe.
Yeah. And it also gets into the legends of the changelings, because changelings have a lot of different definitions depending on the folklore. And so you get the idea of Fae that would steal a human child and leave a fairy in place, and that fairy is usually a destructive little this, that, and the other, and cause all sorts of things. And you have to trick it into admitting it's a fairy in order to get it to go away and get your own baby back. The other version of changelings that I've seen is when you end up with fairies who meet with mortals under the moonlight in the right conditions, you can get a child that is Fae touched, that is not completely fairy and not completely human, and often they're given back to their human relatives, because going into the mounds, going into other places will make them crazy. And so you do get children that have that, and sometimes that's passed along in bloodlines. And so you get people who are, like, I read one about a private detective who had fairy lineage, and so they had the whole not being able to or being able to detect lies when other people told them, because lies are very, very sensitive for the Fae. So I've seen that kind of thing frequently. I think it's fun.
Actually, Carnival Row did that. One of the main characters was part fairy, but they ripped his wings off so he could blend in. Spoiler, I mean, it's a discontinued series. It's several years old at this point.
Yeah.
Spoiler warning, I guess. Yeah, you don't see a lot of it, and I didn't. Well, anyway, we'll move on.
Well, I was thinking actually that it's the idea of the half fae creature, or touched by magic or whatever, is a lot more flexible than, say, a half orc, where the rules are defined. A half orc is what it is, and there aren't a lot of variations in how you get half orcs, but I like that when it comes to the Fae, you have a lot of different possibilities for how humans and Fae can interact and produce, new creatures. I kind of like the idea of the changeling who doesn't get switched back and is, I mean, in either sense, either the one that is the Fae creature, or the human child who is taken to live with the Fae and then just never goes home again. So I think, because I was sitting here thinking, okay, when have I seen, and I don't really read a lot, like I don't go out of my way to read stuff about the Fae. It's not my, one of the things that I really love. And so I don't have Jana's experiences to know what has been done, but I like that idea that it's like the Fae themselves. It could be anything, and you can justify pretty much anything so long as you keep it feeling otherworldly.
And I think a lot of this, of course, is coming. I mean, well, we know that all of this is coming out of folklore and fairy tales, right? Which is always an oral tradition that changes over the years, over the tellings. And of course, there's been some of it that's been codified on, say, the internet or in certain books and everything. But one of the nice things about all of this is when you're writing about what it means to use magic as either a human or a fae or some sort of hybrid, that as long as you're consistent, you can generally get away with a lot of stuff. You can sort of pick and choose which elements matter to the character that you're creating. So I'm not trying to say it's all hand wavium, but there's a certain amount of, if you keep it consistent, it's about what is the story you're trying to tell. When we talk about changelings, for example, I was adopted when I was very small. This is not a scar in my life or anything, but it makes me sensitive to things that are sort of like, who's your true child kind of thing. So when I write about changelings, I have a character who's a changeling who doesn't learn about it until he's an adult, and he's been living in the human world. And now the next book is going to be on how, that changes him and how he affects the story going forward. And that was important to me, because I didn't want to just make it the adopted child is the evil child. Do you know what I mean? But that's personal coming out of me. So I think it's what story do you want to tell, and how do you want to make the magic work for that story? And you can get away with a lot after that.
Yeah.
But does it have to be switched at birth? Is there vampires can find you and convert you with, by sucking you dry kind of thing, right? Is there an equivalent change process with fairydom that can turn you into a fairy, whether you will it or not?
Again, depends. There's a lot of resources there. In most of the folklore, that's not possible. If you are fairy touched, if you're hauled underneath and you eat their food and things like that, you become trapped there, and usually you end up killing yourself. You end up going crazy. Bad things happen. There's any number of stories of what happens with people who are taken into the fairy realm and what goes on from there. Usually, a lot of the fairy stories were folk tales and fairy tales in the tradition of, be afraid of the thing that is out in the dark because bad stuff happens. And when you find mushrooms in circles, avoid them and leave out good things for the little people, because if you piss them off, they're scary and they will do terrible things to you. And so it started from a kind of scary tradition. And so most people would not want to become Fae. In urban fantasy, we do see a little bit more playing around with it, but more often it is revelation of fairy heritage you didn't know you had versus somebody becoming Fae. In World of Darkness, in the Changeling universe, they did some messing around to say, could their dreamers, their humans, become fairy? And there were some ideas for that, but they didn't really see it through before they stopped putting the game out.
Yeah, I think that's maybe less interesting to readers. They want to think about, well, I have this strange heritage that I didn't know about, because that's kind of cool. And dealing with the idea of becoming something other than you are is more creepy. So that kind of makes sense that the game wouldn't have gone that way. We never did play Changeling, did we?
We
No, I
had
don't
it
think
kind
so.
of crossed over with Hunter, but we were focused
Yeah.
on the Hunter part of it.
Well, we played, yeah. Anyway, that's
Making all
Jana
our
and I.
skills work together was a pain. Go ahead.
Jana and I used to be we're still in the same role playing group. It used to be one that played World of Darkness. So anyway, so that's why I bring it up that way. But I like the idea. And it's like what Randy was saying about how within the construct you give yourself within, as long as you're consistent, you can get away with a lot of things. I think it would be interesting to have a person who crossed over and didn't go crazy. I think it would be interesting to explore, what would you do? So, what kind of person could manage that? What would your personality have to be able to become Fae? So I'd be interested in that. But I think it really is mostly childhood that we look at the Changeling, because that's so scary. People, you read those stories about children in hospitals being switched at birth, and that is scary to a lot of people. So I think, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt. I guess
that's okay.
The other thing too is when you trace it back to the origins of where the Changeling stories come from, that also can put an emotional resonance on what you're trying to tell. I mean, the Changeling folklore, fairy tales of Ireland, Scotland, the Celtic countries, generally comes out of this sort of like, hey, my baby's not acting right, my baby isn't developing properly, my baby is perhaps, as we would say today, on the spectrum. And this clearly means it's not a human baby, and therefore I'm perfectly within my rights to just throw it off the cliff, which happened. Like, this is not me making this stuff up. This happened.
Yeah.
And the villagers would come over. You have a fairy baby. We got to get rid of it. So, like, knowing where that comes from also puts a little spin on the how do you want to tell the Changeling story. And I think it would be interesting to have a Changeling who grew up, who also was very neurodivergent. You know what I mean? Like, that would be an interesting character too. I think there's a lot of places you can go with this. I was going to say, actually, I'll save that for later when we're talking about books, but I was just going to add that.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of room, basically, for telling a story about how humanity intersects with the Fae. And I think that's kind of evident because there are so many stories about how humans interact with the Fae. I think it's definitely something that readers are interested in.
Okay. Now, are Fae when we think fairy, we tend to think something along the lines of like a Tinkerbell, right? Peter Pan. But obviously, Fae and fairies are more than that, and sometimes they look a lot scarier than the cute little girl with the wings that throws glitter at you. Do you think the visage of what we describe as a Fae changes the way the stories go with their magic? Do you think when they're portrayed more darkly, visually, it necessarily follows that their magic is more chaotic, or do you think that's just a patina that various universes put over it that are irrelevant?
I think that probably ties into the glamour aspect of it, because who knows what the Fae actually look like if they're all glamored all the time to look beautiful and porcelain skin and perfect features and the pointy ears and the platinum hair, or however your Fae look in whatever universe of your choosing. But the glamour aspect of it, I mean, they could be absolutely hideous demon looking creatures, but we wouldn't know unless there's something about us that allows us to see through that glamour.
I think it also depends a little bit on what your perspective is coming into it. For me, the idea of Tinkerbell, fairies, pixies, what have you, that is very different than just Fae. From the stuff that I've read over the years, the Fae are something different, sometimes darker, definitely mischievous one way or another. Just a question of how lethal are they? So I think that's also going to affect, how readers will first interact with a Fae creature that you put in front of them, or just use that term, just like, oh, okay, or oh no.
Yeah, and in a lot of books and a lot of stories, we get the idea of the Seelie versus the Unseelie Fae, where the Unseelie tend to be a very, very dark Fae. They're gremlins, they're goblins, they're the things that live under your bed and that kind of thing. And the Seelie tend to be a lighter style Fae. Sometimes that gets swapped around. Sometimes the Seelie are the ones that are scarier. But to also get the fairy courts and things like that, going all the way back to A Midsummer's Night Dream, and what the Fae were like there, where they're tricksters and that thing. That's very, very typical. But because of that, you get Fae that fulfill different roles, and so that also tends to have an effect on both their appearance and what their magic does. The scarier Fae, they may not care about glamoring you because they are scary and that's what they do. And you look at some of the stories like the Red Caps, they all wear caps that are dyed in the blood of people that they've killed messily. And they can eat anything they can get their mouths around, and their mouths hinge kind of like a snake jaw does. So getting their mouths around it can be just about anything. And they're scary, and they don't care whether or not you see them being scary, because that's the point, is they are dark spirits. And so they're not going to be beautiful and all that kind of thing, because that doesn't give them what they want. The kinds of things they feed on is nightmares. So that changes how the magic works.
Are they the kind, though, that are only going to attack evil beings, or are they indiscriminate in their consumption?
Well, again, it depends on the story you want to put with it. If they're looking for nightmares, if they're looking for fear, if that's the kind of thing that they feed on, then it's not going to matter. They're not going to. The Fae are not necessarily good. And very often the Fae are neither. Very often the Fae are for the Fae. Yeah. And so it could go either way. You can make friends with a very evil looking Fae that happens to go your direction, or you can have problems with really, really beautiful. And that's the thing. They're not trustworthy either. So a lot of the stories have to deal with that. The Fae are for the Fae, that they're always very self-interested.
That's one of the things I've been trying to emphasize with the stories that I'm telling, is that I like to think of them as they are not like a form of human, right? They are an alien species, right? If you landed on a planet and there were aliens there, like they could be Fae, like, because everything is different depending on the context you put it in. So for me, I try to approach the Fae as Jana was saying, Fae are for the Fae. They have their own agendas. They are immortal or semi-immortal, so that's already going to make them very different from us. We live short lives of less than 100 years. That's nothing to them, right? So how are we not just pets to them? I tend to look at Seelie and Unseelie as chaotic versus order. As opposed to evil versus good, because again, we're trying to see this through a prism of a different species gaze. So for me, the Seelie are the creators. They work in a sort of a formation, but they're also very full of themselves, and they know that they should be in charge of everything. But you still need the chaotic side to tear down, who wants to restart things, who wants to make the changes. So that's kind of how I've always liked to portray them. Something I try not to do is get into evil equals ugly, pretty equals beautiful, right? I think that's reductionist, and I think it also can be something that bleeds into our own perception. If somebody is ugly, they must be a terrible person, right? And if somebody looks beautiful, they must be wholesome and angelic and wonderful.
We call that the halo effect in psychology.
Yeah, I mean, I think that works. That works when you're reading kids' books and stuff, but once we get a little older and you can have the more nuance, I think it's much more exciting when you have a sort of gruesome-looking character who perhaps is doing good in the world, and the other way around, or that one is not necessarily tied into the other, that it doesn't matter. The person's looks is not tied into their character, their moral character, or the things that they do for other creatures.
Yeah, and that becomes really important when you're talking about Fae glamour. Because they use the glamour to make themselves appealing to humans. And so if they consider beauty to be something that's appealing to us, that's really playing on our natures and what you're talking about, that idea that we sometimes have, that beauty equals good. If they know that, then that's kind of a condemnation of humanity, because if that works on us, then they'll do it. They will present whatever appearance will give them what they want. So there you go.
Yeah, we mentioned, Randy, you mentioned the Seelie and the Unseelie, and it's come up a couple times before. So can you define that so that way people listening, because I'm not familiar with that term.
Jana probably knows as much about this as anything, so I'll start, but please feel free to jump on in. The way I understand it is Seelie, Seelie, comes out of Irish and Scottish tradition. This idea about the Seelie have a court, a royal court in which we have the king and the queen, and they gather their other Seelie subjects around them, and they dance a lot, and they torment humans occasionally. If you ever read Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke, she takes us into a visualized world that is like that I think is very powerful. But this comes out of the Celtic tradition. Then there's the Unseelie, which are sort of the more destructive, the more problematic, the more chaotic of the Fae that exist. It's not necessarily all fairies. It's a wide variety of the different species that come under Celtic domain. So everything from Selkies to Boggarts to the Lane Shi, the fairy mistress. Like, they all have their different places in the court. So when we refer to Seelie court, that's what we're talking about. It goes back to what is obviously a European medieval derived concept of folklore. I would be surprised if you had this idea of a court prior to the Europeans showing up in Ireland and Scotland. I mean, maybe, and I haven't done that kind of depth of research, but that's what people understand these days when they talk about the Seelie and the Unseelie. It's more just like the division of layers within this court system. So when they all gather together, everybody knows what their hierarchy is. And everything sort of sprouts out of that. Yeah. But Jana, did I miss
some of it goes back to Spencer and the Fairy Queen. So there's a rich history of talking about the Fae as courtiers and as things like that. And so you're right. Seelie and Unseelie were ways to divide the courts. They also often divide them by season. And they'll say you've got a summer court and a winter court. The idea is there's that opposition in all things. And so, sometimes you even get 4 courts that'll be the 4 different seasons, but autumn and spring tend to be weaker than spring and summer, or summer and winter, because those are the most extreme seasons that we have, where summer will burn you out and winter will freeze you to death. And so there's a lot of play that then gets taken into the folklore, because again, we get into folklore where these are the things people are afraid of. They're the things that people are looking forward to. It's why high holidays become a big deal. Midsummer's Night, there's a reason Midsummer's Night Dream happens on Midsummer's Night, because that's when the Seelie court and when the summer court is at its full power. And you get the opposite thing when you're going into the winter solstice, and you get all of that's going on. And so it's that opposition thing. And there's a lot of stories that get into the different courts and what their purposes are, and what's they're very often opposed to each other. And then there's wild Fae that tend to be outside of all of those structures, and they just do what they want to do because reasons.
Right.
Okay, because reasons is good enough reason for me. When we think wizards, we think a very specific type of magic, right? You're going to be throwing some fireballs or some elemental lightning or whatever, maybe bless the party, heal the party. What kind of magic does Fae do? I mean, we've talked about the source of the magic, but what's the practical effect of the magic? Is it different than other forms?
I imagine that the effect would be whatever they want it to be at that particular moment.
I think the number one thing that is, that people identify as fairy magic is illusion. And it comes back to the glamour. It comes back to changing the appearance of their halls so that a human sees gold and jewels instead of dried autumn leaves and berries. So I think illusion maybe comes naturally to them in a way that it doesn't for humanity, for whatever reason. But maybe it comes down to, we would not be so compelled by the Fae if they didn't make us see what we wanted to see.
And part of that is also that a lot of the folklore around it is that lies and truths is something that the Fae are very particular about. There's rules of hospitality that come around it and things like that. And so illusion is a way to make those lies and those truths a little bit harder to tell, because they'll say that a Fae can't lie directly to you. And very often, if you can force a Fae to tell the truth, you can break out of whatever containment they've created for you. That's going back to the changeling. If you can make the changeling admit that it's a fairy, you can get rid of it and you can get your baby back. And there's other stories like that that are the same thing, that if you can get it to tell the truth, and they're very, very good at deception. And so that ties into magic that has different deception aspects to it, because they can't face that direct on truth. And if you ask the same question a certain number of times, they eventually must tell you the truth. So there's a lot of stories like that. And I think that's what ties into what Melissa's saying, that glamour and illusion and all that kind of thing is such a strong part of Fae magic, because it's all connected with that lies and the truth. Randy, you had something?
No, I mean, I'm sort of getting my head around the question, really, and I don't know that I have a specific answer for that. Can you ask the question one more time, JR? I'm sorry. I'm like the brain is going. And
Oh, mine too. So I was asking if the limitation of the Fae magic, like what it can do, because when we think about magic with regard to like wizards, you think fireball or lightning,
right.
Maybe healing magic if you're talking about witches, or poisons, love magic, but it's very narrow in focus and very purpose driven. Whereas
yeah, like short term type stuff is what we're talking about here. I need to destroy you. Here's a fireball, whatever.
Right, or even long term effects, but a short term spell. I mean, it's you fall in love with them. Okay, well now you're in love. The spell doesn't need to do anything anymore. Whereas glamour, once you don't support it, it goes away. Then you see whatever was underneath. So is there fundamental differences in the type of magic that Fae can do versus any other magical being or entity?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons I blanked out on what the question was is I started having an existential crisis about what is the actual purpose of the Fae in messing around with humans in the first place. Like, why do they bother? I just start having.
That was my next question of what role they serve in society, because all folklore-esque things, unless you're a believer that all of it's real, it serves a purpose in society. Often cautionary tales of vis-a-vis the Brothers Grimm, etc. Sure. So that actually was the next question. But first, before we dive into that existential angst that we unfortunately wrought upon you, do you have an opinion on like what role or like what types of magic Fae are able to do?
I think that they can do a lot. They can do almost anything is what it comes down to. I think what the problem is, we have a lot of holes in the whole folklore world out there, right? There's not like one location that you can go to and say, well, these 10 things are what Fae can do. And outside of that, it's wrong, right? And like I was saying earlier, as long as it's consistent with the story that you're telling, because I think all of us tell different versions of these stories, because there is no one source that will tell you the limitations of magic, that we install it into our stories as part of the world building. I think that a magic that doesn't have consequences, for example, is not a useful story point. If the Fae show up and can launch any power they want and it lasts forever as long as they need to and it affects everybody and they are not in some way drained by it, or the spell doesn't eventually fade, like that's not an interesting story to me. So for me, it's about having a character or a Fae in a story where they draw something out that is necessary for this situation. I need you to know that I've not been draining you for the past 6 months, and you look just like you've always looked when you look in the mirror, for example. And if that glamour goes away, or it is dispelled by another Fae, all of a sudden you'll see that you've become like this skeleton-like creature because you've basically been drained by me. So for me, it has to come from a source, and it has to have some sort of consequence attached to it. But otherwise, I feel like there's no limitation on what Fae can do. They just have specific talents and abilities and focuses that maybe make those elements stronger for them. I hope that answers.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, Randy. And also, let's not forget about the whole elemental thing that we mentioned earlier. I think the Fae, because they are so much more in tune with nature, so that's why, you have stories of, some creature who, places a hand on the forest floor, and next thing you know, you have this beautiful grove of trees and all these animals just sprout literally out of nowhere. Same with, like the idea of, on the wizardry side, weather mages. Well, where did that idea come from? Because the Fae can control the water, they can control the air, they can make weather, they can make it do whatever they want. And I think the whole entire purpose of the Fae, because let's assuming that they're immortal, they've lived forever and they're bored. So why not screw with humans? Because what else are they going to do? Because they have no morals. They don't have the concept of good and evil like we do. They don't, they don't think like we do because they're not human. They're Fae, they're other, they're alien. So they can do whatever they want and damn the consequences, unless humanity can figure out a way to stop them, push them back where they came from, again, depending on what storyline or what universe you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And going back to what you just said, Charlie, about them being able to do anything, I've just been reading the Emily Wilde series by Heather Fawcett. And they're in a singular Fae character in that book. I'll try to stay as spoiler-free as possible. They can shapeshift. They can make clothes like nobody's business. They can clean to the point of changing the space. They can make a tree or a castle pop out of the ground. It's all these different things, whatever the situation requires, usually. So it's the question to me is, well, what do they want to do? That's what they do.
Yeah.
But I also think they don't necessarily do it just like that. I feel like if you could do anything you wanted with a snap of your fingers, like you'd never move from your chair, and what kind of story is that, right? I love the idea of having
That's
having
Wally.
to work to get to a
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so purpose driven, and the limitation is their imagination, it sounds like, at least at the moment, and then the ability of other Fae to cooperate with them and not uncover what they're doing and break the glamour just because they're not getting along. It almost like they serve the purpose that Q in Star Trek serves, or that the trickster gods serve, almost, when it comes to culture and story.
Yeah, there's a lot of trickster to it. There's a lot of, explaining. When you find mushrooms that grow in circles, it's weird. And so a lot of the, explaining what is weird goes into that. Some of the stories that I've read, and again, this goes back to World of Darkness as well, is that they feed on imagination. They feed on hopes and dreams and things like that. And so they actively need humanity and our hopes and our dreams and our imagination, because that's all part of what gives them their power, is the ability to soak that up from what we come up with. And so to inspire us is a wonderful thing, because a very inspired human is a really great food source. Because again, it doesn't bother them that they are feeding off of an intelligent being. That's part of the fun is that you can do that. So I think there's a lot of interesting ways you can take that to say, well, why are they here and what do they want? There's a lot there that goes into possibilities.
Yeah, we're definitely their louche. They literally, they feed off of our energies. Our positive energies, our imagination, our negative energies, our fear, our despair. The more intense our emotion, the more they feed. And I mean, if I was going to live forever, I'd want to probably continue living forever. So why not feed on humans who are just insignificant little gnats who live for less than a century?
Exactly.
Whatever.
And also, that's something we hadn't actually touched on quite a bit, is the fact that they live off our attention. The whole idea that if we don't believe in them, they go away. Go back to Tinkerbell, for example, clamoring she's alive again, right? I know that's but if that comes off of the tradition of they need to be paid attention to, they need to be believed, they need to be feared, they need to that intense emotion. But the belief is a huge thing for the Fae, and if we don't believe in them, they go away. Much like your teeth, if you don't believe in them, they go away.
I thought that was if you don't brush them, they go away. What have I been doing this whole time?
That too. Yeah, if you scream, "I do not believe in fairies," then Julia Roberts gets flung across the room. So, yeah,
you got to do that in the bathroom mirror with it's dark and spin around 3 times.
Oh no, that's
That's Bloody
That's a
Mary.
different kind of
Bloody
fairy creature. Yeah.
Now we're getting into urban legends, and I think that's a different
Yeah.
battle.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
That'd be interesting.
speaking of urban legend, that makes me think modern. So is the way Fae are represented in modernity, has that evolved, do you think, since the days of yore where it was all dire warnings to trust no one and nothing?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Like I said, I've got like Fae stories bopping around in my head. I worked in Boston for 4 summers, giving tours through the city, talking about the history. And so the story bopping around in there, which is touched on a bit in one of Jana's recent anthologies.
The Donovan story.
There's a Fae court in the middle of downtown Boston. And they're very modern. They use cell phones. They do all these different things. But it's also integrated with the magic that's inherently everywhere. And so it's kind of a merging of the two. And I'm just seeing where it goes and what happens.
I have also given historic tours, although mine was at Valley Forge. You've got to say things like, we're walking, we're walking.
Walking with purpose.
Yes, and you got to learn to walk backwards. So maybe as a tour guide, we were also part Fae, because that's a skill in itself.
That's
Oh,
possible.
absolutely.
So when Fae go away, do you end up with like other evolved forms of them? Like humans die. Sometimes you get human ghosts that become, joggers or other things. Is Fae the end destination of their evolution if they die or you don't believe in them? Or do they become something else?
Like, does something fill that slot maybe for our belief? If we stop believing in Fae, what are we believing in instead?
Well, no, actually, I was literally asking, like, is if you
Like,
kill
where
a
do they
Fae,
go when they die?
Yeah, do they come and you get fairies haunting you now, or once they're dead in folklore,
Gosh,
are
I
they
hope
just
not.
gone?
Can you imagine?
That again
Ghost
depends on the source of the story. In a lot of cases, dead Fae is just dead, especially if you kill them with cold iron. And that was the thing, is that there's specific things you use for fighting fairies, because if you don't kill them with one of those kinds of things, they pop back, they reincarnate, that whatever you want to call it, they will show up again unless you kill them in a way that keeps them dead. And so that's why a lot of your heroes had to use specific Fae killing weapons. Cold iron is a problem. And this is why, in modernity, when we're talking about those kind of Fae stories, they often struggle in the real world, because we have real world where some of the things that they have problems with show up all the time. And so you have to decide, how do they deal with that? Why does technology work for them or not, depending on, which of the different weaknesses you want to draw on to say, this is why they show up or this is why they can't.
There's an interesting evolution of that kind of stuff. Like, you use vampires because it's an easy example. They can't see their reflection. Well, they can't see their reflection because mirrors had silver in them, and they had the disaffinity to silver. Modern mirrors don't use silver anymore, but somehow in all of the lore, modern vampires still can't see their reflection in normal, essentially glass. Is there an equivalent evolution in the way we would understand a fairy that has to change because the way the modern world has changed and the way things are built differently?
Well, what about the definition of cold iron? Because you can take that a lot of different ways, and some people say, well, it's this, maybe it's all iron, maybe it's just steel, maybe it's whatever. And if there are that many definitions of cold iron, then why not have Fae who have adapted to whatever it used to be, that it no longer has the power it had? So I think the adaptation is really, as with so much of what we've been talking about, going to depend on what you want to make the story be, what you are interested in as a writer or a reader. And if you make it consistent, then nobody's going to argue with you, so long as it still feels like the Fae.
Yeah,
I love
and
the
it could be
idea of a
fun to-
throwaway line that the Fae finally managed to evolve out of cold iron, and now we're using plastic everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, I guess you didn't need that.
Yeah.
And Century's getting rid of it. Now they're not even using cold
Right.
iron.
Right. Uh-huh.
But we do need weaknesses, and I think that's part of why it's been important in stories, and as important as we're looking at other stories, that because we say, well, they can do whatever they want with their magic, they're experts at lying, they live forever, then what hope does humanity have? And I think that's why they leaned into, there's certain certain woods that help against the Fae. Hawthorns and rowan and things like that can be something against the Fae. Having cold iron, so in stories we need to look for something that says that they can't just be all powerful, because when we're facing all powerful things for good or for ill, it makes for not as fun of a story. So I think that's the other thing you think about as you go, in modernity. Does that mean that what is the new thing that is a threat to them, or do we have to nuke them from space?
I think one thing that's been fun
The only way to be sure.
one thing that I've done in a couple of stories, and I've seen done elsewhere too, is where you start blending the idea of, okay, where does the Fae leave off and gods come into it? And are gods more powerful than Fae? And in the stories that I've written, I've actually had this conversation between characters that, yes, as a matter of fact, gods are more powerful. You're just this dinky little nature sprite or something. But I, on the other hand, am Janus, the god of gates and change, So I like that particular clash too, because all of a sudden you think the Fae may be all powerful, but actually, and this is not a religious thing. This is not like, the white Christian God coming down with his fingers, and pointing at you or something. But it's more like the gods that have been called gods around the world. They have more oomph to them, if nothing else, because in theory, they're more believed in.
So is there any, I've seen it sometimes in stories, but I don't know if it's something just the author did. Is there any lore that ties contracts to Fae? Is that where you get like some of the creatures you meet at the crossroads? Is that a Fae thing?
Gnomes specifically, at least in the universe that I write in. Gnomes don't do anything without a contract, and you better have everything spelled out, or they're going to find those loopholes like Jana was talking about. They're really, really good at negotiating. And if you don't have a contract, good freaking luck. They're going to mess with you hard.
Yeah.
Lots
maybe
of things
not
crossroads.
Maybe not contracts the way that you'd think of, like the devil signing a contract with you for your soul, but definitely the idea of bargains and agreements and promises, and be very careful what you say to them, because they will take it as given and they will find a way to mess you up if you give them that power.
I think that they're very into rules. Yeah, a lot of rules. A lot of, and with the rules come loopholes. Like, you don't even have to put it in paper. If you said this thing, it's as good as they can hold you to it anyway. But if you can find a loophole around it, I think they actually admire that sort of thing, because that is the sort of thing they would do if they could. And so that can be a plot point that you can use to get out of something that seems intractable.
Right. No grudges.
And we get
you got out of it fair and square.
Exactly.
We get the informing people of the rules before they go off and do things. We see this in fairy stories all the time, when they'll say, make sure you do this, that, and the other. Do not give them your name from your own lips, because the way that you say your name is very specific to you, and there's a sense of ownership there. And if they get your name from their own lips, then they can use that against you. That's the kind of thing that, you often get warning entities in a story who will say, okay, well, if you're going to go deal with the Fae, these particular Fae, here's some things that you need to know. Do not do the following things, take the following protections, and good luck on you. Because again, we have to have rules. We have to have ways you can squirrel out of this, because otherwise it's very easy for them to become so all powerful that the story is not as interesting anymore.
And Fae themselves are very. Oh, no, go ahead, Carrie. I'm sorry.
I was actually getting off topic a bit, so please.
Well, I was just going to say, they put a lot of stock into the name concept. Anyway, the idea is that they have a true name. Nobody knows that, or it's a special kind of magic. If you know their true name, they may tell you their name is Bob, but actually the true name is something much more complicated and more difficult. And if you know it, you have a hold over them, and that can be a plot point too.
Okay. So it's kind of the Rumpelstiltskin's effect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Rumpelstiltskin is a Fae. That's a Fae story.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, really?
Yes,
definitely.
totally. That is a fairy story. That's a Fae story. He's a Fae being that has made that contract about, how do I get your baby? And again, why he wants it, he might want to eat it. He might want to raise it as his own. We don't know. It doesn't tell us. But that's the contract, is if she can figure that out, because names are power.
So I
I
did a
bet all
quick
that
look.
straw that turned into gold turns back into straw again on CD Pen.
Yeah, probably.
Yep.
So Rumpelstiltskin came out in 1812 from the Grimm's version, which is where it's first recorded with the name of the short story, the name of the helper. And he's depicted as Fae adjacent, not traditionally a fairy, because he's a dwarf, goblin, imp, or troll, depending on translation.
Again, that
Yeah,
falls
but-
under our broader version of Fae.
Right,
versus
right, I
fairy.
just-
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, we're going to do the panel. We've got to book it for Sasquatch and for modern Fae, because I do think that's going to be its own thing, especially with the paranormal romance and the just urban fantasy and all that being so big of a
Sexy
genre.
Fae.
Mm.
With man chest on the cover, because reasons. But are they
Sexy Fae.
blue?
Let's go back to
Would they be blue? Or is that just an
no, because
alien?
that's
thing?
aliens.
No.
But so
That'd be paranormal sci-fi.
oh, there we go. Gotta get the terms right. I don't read enough romance apparently. Need more love in my life. So other than the topics we're going to revisit, is there anything about the Fae and their magic, broadly speaking, that we need to cover? I do feel like this is fertile ground for future episodes. So we definitely do that. But for this broader one.
I just love thinking that they're out there. Like, in a rational way, probably not. But like, I love the idea that there's a veil world beyond which they live, beyond which they think about us in sort of mercenary, but also joyous ways. I just love the idea that there's this divide where there's another part of the world with these strange beings.
Well, you're in luck because no one has ever accused the Blasters and Blades podcast of being rational.
Yeah. This is
Where do
true.
I fit in?
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I completely agree, Randy, because there's so many, we've got folklore and all these old stories and oral traditions, and these stories didn't just come out of nowhere. Something inspired the original storytellers. And so how do we know that maybe way back when there was no veil and we all did live on the same plane with all these creatures, and then something happened that separated us? But people remembered and wanted their future generations to know of these entities. So,
Yeah.
who knows?
I
I
agree.
agree with you, Randy.
Good. we got to be on a panel sometime together.
Yeah, stories have a grain of truth somewhere, like Charlie said. Sure, I think there might be something out there. We just don't have the sight to see it. Sight with a capital S, of course.
Okay. Melissa, any final thoughts on Fae Magic?
Well, mine was actually going in a slightly different direction to the idea of the Fae being out there, and that was thinking about how the Fae are depicted as being with us in the urban fantasy sense of we now have Fae that walk among us. They are people that you could fall in love with, that you could have a life with, and it's interesting because it's sort of the way vampires have been rehabilitated in many stories. This is something scary that has tamed, or that we've tamed, or has chosen to be tamed, and adds to our lives. That the modern idea of a Fae living among us is very different from the scary old world. They are very dangerous kind of Fae. And I like the idea of that being so compelling that we as readers wanted to see that in our lives. We wanted to see that represented now. So I think that's an extension of saying, we want them to be out there. I think there are stories where they wanted them to be out there so badly, they made them part of us. And that's interesting to me.
I think that also suggests that we have come up in the world enough, that we have become sophisticated in the world enough, that we have matched their ability to exist. Like that we can now live together. You guys are not so much more superior than we are. We have our own magics. I kind of like that. That's one of the things that really fuels my fiction. So I love what you're saying there, Melissa.
And yet I have to wonder if the whole living side by side with us is all a ruse. Sooner or later,
That would be
it's
fun
going
too.
to turn out poorly.
Yeah, that would be fun too.
They're just slow rolling us, because what else are they going to do?
Yeah,
They're playing
They
the
have
long game
time.
here.
it's
They
that
can
whole
play a very long game. Go,
yeah,
Melissa.
it's that whole what do you do with your life when you're immortal?
Mhm.
And the answer cannot be collecting books forever and ever,
Why
just
not?
because even that has an end. And you'd have to be super wealthy to afford the warehouse you would have to store your collection in.
I mean, if you've got magic,
So,
you can just glamour some money.
no, well, yeah, maybe. I'm not sure I love that answer, because I've always been a little bit annoyed on behalf of the humans who are tricked by it, because often they aren't greedy, they just got tricked, and it's just sad. I just find that sad.
It's fair.
So anyway,
And book abuse is a crime, and we should all not tolerate that. So.
that's right. Don't do it. Don't do it.
All right. So rather than tell me what you're reading, since we're wrapping this up, Terry, do you got any closing thoughts first?
Ooh. This is definitely a fun topic. As I've mentioned ad nauseum at this point, the Fae have been on my brain lately. And so it's fun to get out some of those ideas and bounce them around with other people far more knowledgeable than I am, that I can file away and go, yep. That's what I'm doing when I'm not talking. I'm like, oh, okay. How do I work that in? Ooh.
Okay. Jana, finally, closing thoughts.
I think I have given more than plenty of thoughts on this particular one. Sorry about that, ladies. And so I will leave my thoughts where I was.
And just for the record, we didn't intentionally pick an almost all lady panel. That was just who signed up. Okay. So
what, you didn't want us? This wasn't intentional?
I'm sorry, there are no ladies in this room. I'm just letting you know.
Yeah, what's up with that?
Nobody normal either. Let's get that clear.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just trying to pretend like I'm normal so I can fit in, and now you're telling me that I'm fitting in because I'm abnormal, and I don't know. I might need to be crushed about this later, but until then, because we do have a timer where Jana's going to like shoot me in the back of the head or something. Jana,
that has no. If I'm going to do something to you, I'm going to have a lot more imagination than that.
I don't feel safe on the top row anymore.
All of you, your listeners,
You're fine, Terry. You're safe.
If I disappear, I'm just saying you heard it here first. Look at him. I'm just going to put that out there. But Jana, which one of your books, and if when you're done, you could throw it in the side chat so I can copy and paste it over for the show notes, would you like people to read of yours the most? Anything you've written?
Oh, well, that's a silly question. I have lots of books that I've written that I like, but the one that deals with the Fae most directly is Fallen Stone, where we deal with a woman who can use elemental magic and finds out that somebody is sucking the Fae dry and turning them into beauty products. And she decides that must stop. So,
absolutely.
yeah, it was lots of fun. That's the one that has most to do with the Fae. I've got a Diana McDonough story coming out later, and that she deals with the Fae. But that's probably the best one for the moment.
Is that a standalone novel? Is it a short story?
Fallen Stone is currently a standalone novel. It might turn into something more than that at some point, but this is not that point.
Which pen name wrote it?
Jenna Ray wrote it. I carved it to this pen name.
All right, Terry. Which one of your books would you like to recommend?
Ooh. Well, we're going to have to go with short stories since that's all that's published right now. Since we're on the topic, I'm going to go with Sir Donovan and the Sea Serpent in the recent Tides and Tentacles and Tides anthology. I always get that wrong. It's
Tentacles and Tides.
It's the first dip into that love letter to Boston that just happens to have Fae in it.
Okay. All right. Melissa.
Well, do you want it to be a Fae novel or just my favorite novel that I've written?
I specifically said favorite when I asked. It was Jana who decided that she wanted to make it a Fae novel, and that's okay.
Favorite.
I'm making it attached to the panel.
Well, let me tell you, my favorite novel is not published yet, so and it does have Fae in it. But for my series that does include Fae, I'm going to go with the first book of the Living Oracle, which is called Hidden Realm. And it is about humans dealing with the fact that the Fae realm, which has been blocked off from our world for a millennium, is starting to come back, and it's been poisoned by human magic over that 1,000 years, and the elves are really pissed off. So there you go.
And they're scary.
They are scary. They're scary, veiny elves because they've been corrupted.
Terrifying.
And yeah, it's really great.
Yeah.
So
Do you know when that's going to come out?
that
It's
one
out.
is out already. I will put that in the.
Okay. What about you, Charlie?
So I'm going to go with Fae Wars, Northwest Front. When elves from another dimension invade the Pacific Northwest, a teenage girl has to team up with a Sasquatch in order to survive and try to get some semblance of her life back. So similar to what Melissa was saying, elves invaded. They used to live here on Earth 2,000 years ago until they were kicked out, and they managed to find a way to use magic to come back. And they're kicking humanity's butt. And so we need to try to do what we can to get rid of them and send them back where they came from. My book is number 7 in the series. It's a shared universe from Canon Publishing with J.F. Holmes and Lucas Markham. And my sequel, Battle for Tacoma, is going to be out later this summer.
Cool.
That is an interestingly dark universe. I have written a short story in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah, not a universe I want to live in. No, thank you.
I mean, I originally wrote that short story. Well, I was going to co-write it with Jana, so that way it could, get some branding out for the series we're working on now. But she said it was too dark for her, so she couldn't put her name on it.
No, it would not have gone with my brand. Not even. Nope.
And mine was not by far the darkest in that universe. So
I believe it.
All right, Randy, which one of your books would you like to send people towards? Your favorite? Everything you've
the
written.
book I want to send people towards is the book that they want to read, right? Like, so that's why it's so hard to pick. I right now I have 4 novels, and they are kind of evenly divided into a dark fantasy universe, where we have rock stars pursued by scary fairies, and a war between Fae and human that's been developing. Those 2 books in the darker fantasy universe are the only song worth singing and leave no trace. And they technically don't have a connection yet, but in my head, they have a 3rd book connection. So I'm hoping to do that. So like, if that's more your jam, but if you want silly, funny, backstagey kind of pop culture-y Fae meets humans, my Tooniverse, which starts with Tune In Tomorrow and has We Interrupt This Program coming next, they're all standalones, is basically, what if the Fae decided they wanted to make their own movies and TV shows starring humans? And what would that look like? And what slapdashy sort of shenanigans could go on behind the scenes? I'm an entertainment journalist, so I can tell you, I know how the sausage gets made. I've been putting it in there. But I love being able to do a funny, punny take on it that's slowly becoming a little bit more serious as the series goes on, because I'm thinking more about the Fae and what they need from humans and how they treat humans, and maybe how humans are going to push back against that. And there's a 3rd book of that coming out in next year, called Don't Touch That Dial. So I would say, depending on what you're looking for, start with Tune In Tomorrow. That's the 1st book in the Seelie book. The other books, I would say, The Only Song Worth Singing, The Rock Stars, and The Scary Fairies is a good way to go to. So sorry, I know I like that's more than one book, but what do you want? Whatever you want, go get it.
All right. Chased by Scary Fairies definitely has the alliteration factor going for it.
Doing what I can.
Rhyming factor, yeah.
Whichever books you choose, we will link to all of them in the show notes. But the important part about that is that you please be kind and speak your mind. On the reviewing platforms, your reviews help the right readers find the right books. So do your part. It really does make a difference. And with that said, I would like to tell you, I've got to ask the guest. Wow, this is what happens when I don't have enough caffeine. Jana, if we wanted to track you down on the wild interwebs, where might we do so?
You can find me over at Linktree, linktr.ee/Opal Kingdom Press. That links to all of the other things, or you can look for either of these pen names, and if it has to do with publishing, it is me almost all the time, so I'm pretty easy to find. As I tell people, I am the loser at internet hide and go seek, so you can find me.
All right. What about you, Terry? And all the links will be in the show notes.
Ooh. You can find me at my website, terrykjob.com, and occasionally flitting about the Book of Faces.
All the links will be in the show notes. Melissa.
Okay, so my website, melissamcshanewrites.com, has a link to sign up for my newsletter, which is published monthly. You get stories about my life in India and new release updates and things like that. Or you can help Jana out by buying physical books and ebooks and audiobooks at my storefront, nightharborpress.com. And I am easy to follow on Amazon, and they are really good about sending updates for new releases.
All right. Charli, when you're not at the chocolate factory, where can we find you?
Oh, that would be dangerous. I'd be 300 pounds by tomorrow if I did that. So you can't find me at the chocolate factory, but you can find me at charliecox.net. Just check the spelling. If you throw that E in there, you're going to end up somewhere else. I'm also on Amazon. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I'm all over the place. So yeah, come hang out. Come find me. Let's talk.
All right. Finally, Randy, if we wanted to find you.
Very easy to find me, almost as easy as to find Jana. randydawn.com. If you'll see my name right here and with my face, it's Randy with 2 E's. So randydawn.com. And most everywhere on the social medias, I'm Randy or I'm Randy Dawn. It's pretty easy to find, especially with the 2 E's. So yeah, check it out. All the links to my books and my socials are on my webpage.
All right. And with that out of the way, now I can really, for real this time, tell you where you can find us, dear listener. You can find us on our Linktree, linktr.ee, Linktree/Blashes and Blades Podcast. Again, Linktree/Blashes and Blades Podcast, right? The link to all the things, the BitChute, the Rumble, the YouTube, the TikTok, the Twitters. We've got our Spotify, our Discord, our Substack, our Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. You can email us at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, Blasters and Blades Podcast @gmail.com for professional purposes only. People, save the shenanigans from Stabby Stab over there on the Instagram, the Twitter, and the email. These episodes aren't free to produce, so we greatly appreciate when you throw a few dollars our way to help keep the lights on. If the rest of you want to do that, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it's for the podcast, and I will promise to keep the lights on. Keep Jana duly caffeinated with her Dr. Pepper so she stays sane and nobody has to die. And with that out of the way, I would like to thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades Podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. And with that, I am going to hit the end button. Wait for it. And